Welcome, everybody. Dr. Josh Long here with AME Podcast, my quest to talk to folks who's continuing making music, lifelong learning and music education, what I call music beyond the classroom. It's really fascinating to me just because, we see music making happening so much in the public schools. And when you're little, I say, or beyond before adults, and then you see adults actually continue doing it. We are sponsored by Art and Music Emporium, which is serving artistic excellence. We do things such as fix instruments. We also do some performing initiatives that you might be interested in. We have the annual Community Band by the Sea down in Wildwood, New Jersey. We actually just got our date for that in 2025. We've done the Bethlehem Steel Company Legacy Band performance, which we're going to be finalizing that date for 2025. And we're in the midst of Tuba Christmases as we're recording this in December. So do check us out. We are on Facebook. We are also at www.artmusicemporium.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Do like our Facebook pages. And we also do have a Patreon account if you are interested in contributing anything. All the proceeds go to, again, getting folks to continue making music beyond the classroom. I'm so happy and excited to talk about my next guest on our podcast. I actually met him when I was a college band director and met him out on the field helping with the staff and also creating marching band shows and arranging and orchestrating, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. I know he's been a band director. I know he's involved with a West Point band, and I know he's a trumpet player. And I know the newest founding instrument that he's gotten into lately is guitar, which is really cool that he's picked up a different instrument kind of in later in his life to continue making music. So please welcome Douglas Richard. How are you, Douglas?
Well, Josh, how are you doing today?
Doing very nice. Very nice. Yeah. So, hey, I thought maybe we just kind of start right a little bit. I know we talked a little bit before we started our podcast, just a little bit about what you were kind of doing to get into music making, and then we'll kind of fast forward. I know I always ask that just because I like to, get the interests of why people go down this path, and you're still involved with it.
I am still involved. I started playing music like most of us in elementary school. Started off on saxophone like most of us, but it was really good as a brass player because I think it really helped me to understand the difference between high and low and relative pitch. Not
Okay.
perfect pitch, but just the fact that yeah, that sounds up there and that note sounds down there, even if you had a hard time remembering what those notes were called at the time.
Hmm.
And then when I went into grade seven, which was the junior high, they called it 7 through 9, I switched over to French horn.
Oh,
And
cool.
it just seemed like it seems like a good instrument to play. Why not? And I think I was tired of trying to carry a tenor sax on a bus. That got old as a little kid. And continued through high school playing French horn until my senior year, where I switched to trumpet because, like an idiot, I thought, wow, French horns are expensive. Trumpets can't cost that much. Yeah, but, but it was still a very good move. And throughout all of that, and also I think many people can relate to this. We had a marching band, and
Mhm.
that created it was a wonderful culture. It was a very healthy program, even though it was competitive. The focus was the only person you need to do better than is not that group over there.
Mhm.
That's not a worthy goal because if you outscore them the first week, then what else do you have to work for? What
Mhm.
you really need to do is worry about can you make yourself and your performance better? And that I think had a very big, profound. It had a great impact on a lot of us who actually ended up continuing on into music.
Okay.
Um, and of course, with that, because you had great instructors, you were like, oh, I think I want to be a band director when I grow up, like many of us. And so I got my undergrad degree in music education.
Okay.
And, and it was a varied experience. Started off at a conservatory and thought, wow, this is really kind of serious, probably more than I was ready for. And then
Okay.
transferred to another university and finished my degree with music ed and went out to look for jobs
Mhm.
and found out the hard way. I wish that a lot of our instructors would talk about how to take a successful job interview, that it's important to be
Yep. Mhm.
honest, but then there's a point of being too honest. And any problem with their program? Well, yeah, dumb me. Okay, so um, yeah, so I was looking for jobs, and then I found out that there was an opening down in one of the special bands in Washington, D.C., the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps.
Oh,
And
okay.
I auditioned, and I was a bugler there for all of a year, which,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and what an amazing experience. I think I was 23 at the time. And what a just amazing impact that had. Was there all of a year, and then there was an opening across the street at the Army Band for a music copyist,
Oh,
which, oh yeah, that's not the person that stands behind a photocopier, but in way back in those old days, and we're talking the early 90s, 1990s, everything was still done with pen and ink. So Finale was just coming out.
okay.
Uh, there were other software programs. Sibelius wasn't a thought yet. Dorico, no thoughts. They had
Yeah.
other programs, but it was in its infancy.
Okay.
And people, all they knew was that if the power goes out, you can still copy by candlelight. And I kid you not. I mean, that was told to me. We don't want to hear about computers at the time because,
Wow.
well, the processing speed, that was back when they thought what 256 IBM was going to be that's all you need, and
Yep.
and Macs were still portable with a little 9-inch diagonal monochrome screen. This was the early days of computing.
Hmm.
Was no internet in a practical sense, and if you finally got into the internet in 1996, you had the dial-up modems that still didn't do anything other than run up your phone bill.
Hmm. Yep.
So, um, but for 5 more years, your job 8 hours a day was to copy what the arranger wrote. And so it was an excellent score study. And while I still played trumpet, it was not in the band. It was more as a teaching tool when I'd work with local high school bands. And that's actually how I started to get into being a music arranger.
Okay.
When college, I would write music for my brass quintet. It was more of a commercial venture. So
Okay.
Christmas was always a big hit, like not unlike Tuba Christmas, but the deal was, well, if we don't have it, we'll write it.
Hmm.
And, not being aware of copyright infringement or anything in those days, I mean, it was just, I'm not saying we were all living under a rock, but well, who's that hurt?
Uh-huh. I get it.
Times were different then, and it's not, that doesn't make it okay, but that's how it
Yeah.
worked out. I started writing for brass quintets, and then in college, writing for marching bands.
Hmm.
Whether they were competitive or not, we could use some music that's not available by publishers. Like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. So that's how I started cutting my teeth. And then when I got to the Army Band as a music copyist, I
Hmm.
would write arrangements, even though it wasn't my job. I would write arrangements for the brass quintet that they had there, and
Okay.
also they had at the time a British style brass band. And the education that I gained from those experiences was just priceless because you'd have a player come up to you and said, that line works, but if you wrote it like this, you would get the same effect and it would be guaranteed to work every single time. Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay. And they weren't cruel about it. It was just, let me help you help me for the next time.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that type of sharing of information has been a great way of paying it forward too. Working
Hmm.
with other arrangers saying, as they're learning, okay, next time maybe you could consider this or this. Don't change it now. It's done. It's been played. There's no point in that. That's a waste of your time.
Hmm.
However, here are some more tools you could add to your kit
Yeah.
as you develop, you know,
Yeah,
because I look
that's
at some of the stuff I read 20 years ago and I'm like,
yeah.
but you make the best choices you can at the time. And then
Hmm.
as you learn more, you realize that maybe it's not so smart to write tubas that high. There's no need for that. That's why we have euphoniums and trombones and French horns.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm blabbing, but
No, 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 that's all good. Yeah, and I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna ask a few questions and kind of unpack of what I heard. So first of all, and I just want to kind of just backtrack for a second. I know you got really interested in music, and I just asked this question just because a lot of folks I meet always want to know why people are interested in music. And I know you had that interest in school and you continued on beyond that. And I know you really liked it. And I know, and I'll share this off. I know you made a
Yeah.
comment that you're really good at it and you really liked it. What do you think it was about music in the beginning that just inspired you, that just gave you that interest that essentially that you
You know
committed a
what?
career to it and you still are doing it. But that's just one quick question I want to quick ask, just because you obviously saw it at a younger age and then you kind of move forward with it. You know what I mean?
I still think at the end of the day, it was because it provided a very interesting community and a sense of community
Okay.
that, it didn't make a difference what you looked like. I mean, if you weren't the slickest person on the football field, playing touch football in elementary school, so what? It was something that you could do that the teachers and your peers valued you because you were there.
Hmm.
And then you start making these bonds, and maybe these are folks that you wouldn't, necessarily want to talk to at any other time because
Hmm.
maybe you weren't in that science class. Because if you were like me, you weren't qualified to be in that science class.
Hmm.
I wasn't interested in it. Um, I, Music was something I felt that I was decent at and I enjoyed, and everybody
Hmm.
likes feeling successful
Yeah.
on any level,
Yeah.
and my version of success is nowhere near as good as a lot of other people, but maybe
Sure.
it's at a higher level, and that's irrelevant. The
Yeah.
what you can when you can. You do the best that you can, and I don't think anybody else can ask anything realistically more than that.
Yeah.
And I think it was that attitude, that sense of community that, yeah, you are welcome here. We appreciate your contributions. And that's not saying that if you were being a typical kid and being stupid, you wouldn't get called out for it. But even that was considerate of like, yeah, you're learning some decorum here too.
Hmm.
That what fast forward 20 some years, 15, 20 years, I don't know. And I was a high school band director, that it wasn't just about teaching, quote, literature.
Hmm.
It was, no, I would like to teach you about life, and music is the medium. I don't have to like you. I have to work with you. Maybe I don't want to go to lunch with you. So what? I do want to be able to work with you towards a common goal. That's important.
Hmm.
You know, who's the better player, the hot shot that you can't count on being there, or the person that might not be the best player but is there bringing it every single time? I would rather work with that type of person any day.
Hmm.
That's me.
Yeah, no, and you bring up a great point. I mean, you bring up this point of community, and I think you know this. It's like ding, ding, ding. That's like the big word for me because I find that so fascinating, especially that you felt that, in the beginning, that you show up and you're there, and just exactly what you just said. When you're in high school band director, it's like you're using music as a medium to teach really strong life skills, in my opinion, because
Yes,
it's that sense of how can I say it the right way? It's like that sense of making sure we're all working together towards some common goal.
it
And that
is.
that can
It's
be
a
gone beyond music, right?
absolutely. I mean, it can be, you've committed to a project.
Hmm.
In this case, it happens to be, and also even when I would recruit for marching band, which is, as you know, as anybody that's ever tried to recruit for marching band, the answer is, I don't want to. Well, I
Hmm.
know that, no kidding. But I would never ask, do you want to join marching band? The question was, will you?
Hmm.
Will you help me out? Well, I don't want to. I didn't ask if you wanted to. I asked, would you? Uh, well, it's not fun. Well, what is fun?
Hmm.
It might not be fun, but it will be rewarding.
Hmm.
And that there's a difference. Fun, yeah, okay, great. Maybe you don't like everything you play, but if the goal is to sound good on everything you play,
Hmm.
I mean, we got to the point where, and the band sounded better than it ever should have,
Hmm.
because to me, being a musician is about communicating. Are you in tune with that person? Have you guys listened? Do you realize you guys are matching there?
Hmm.
Oh, oh, does anybody have a tuner? I'm like, oh, no, 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 you got two on each side of your head. Use them. It's all relative. I'm like, oh, okay. But can you think, in a large term like that and still be flexible?
Hmm.
Okay, well, if the tuning note's a little bit sharp, so what? If we're in tune with each other,
Right.
who's to say that's the right note?
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and well, what are we going to play for a spring concert? I don't know. What do we sound good on? What? Let's start reading. And this is years into it, but from a collective, do you guys think you sound good on that? Do you think the audience would like to hear you and we're going to take a pass on it. We're going to read it, not rehearse it, read it. Is this something you'd feel good about performing? Yeah, we
Hmm.
think the audience might like that. Okay, then we'll start working on it. Used to drive my principal nuts. Well, what do you plan? I don't know. What? Yeah, we're figuring it out. We'll get there. Don't worry, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Um, but that's also a sense of ownership. As it was my program, but it was their band.
Hmm.
And I think as growing up being an orchestrator and arranger, which is ultimately is how I've made my living,
Hmm.
it's really about what the client wants.
Hmm.
And more importantly, maybe what the client needs.
Right.
Well, we'd like to do this. Are you sure?
Hmm.
Maybe you should do something that sounds like that, but isn't. Maybe something a little more attainable.
Right.
Success builds upon success.
Hmm.
Do you want to be you or do you want to be them?
Right.
So just, and I think that's kind of going along with it, but the idea of community
Yeah.
that some of my best friends were the same guys I went to high school with, the high school band. I've got two dear friends of mine that are what I refer to as my logical family, not my biological family. And we still chit chat and yik yak. We've worked together. They've been my
Hmm.
bosses. They've been my employees. They've been my cohorts. But
Hmm.
most importantly, we've all made music together and all from the same foundation. We've gone into three very different aspects of making music.
Hmm.
One fellow's they were all public school educators, but my one
Okay.
friend is DMA in trumpet performance. I have another friend that is just a brilliant conductor.
Hmm.
Really good conductor, not just band, orchestra, shows, anything. He's just very much geared like that. I am
Hmm.
neither of those, but I
Hmm.
produce music in a different way than they do. And we laugh about that 40 years later that we're all still creating music in vastly different ways, but
Hmm.
we all depend on each other to make a product happen.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
community. It's still
yeah.
community.
Well, and that's what's interesting to me because I think a lot of times what folks look, and I'm talking people who are outside the box of us being musicians and
Yeah.
teachers and and in the field of music, they just see people making music, and I don't think they realize like how much it takes to have a community. Obviously, you obviously need the music and it's arranged for you and it needs to be, for success. And then just like you said, there's so many different avenues where, you have a performance person or a conductor or, orchestration or whatever, and I think that's where it's interesting to me just because it provides such talents. And that's what's fascinating with this whole like lifelong learning side of it, just because I think a lot of people don't see what it could offer. You know what I mean? As far as except showing, oh, here's our product. And I always joke, and I just wanted to say this because I know you will laugh. I always call it the box music. You turn the volume on and then you shut it off, right?
Right.
And that's not how it is.
Well, I don't think people realize, when you go see a symphony or a concert band or any performance ensemble, I mean, not a small group, well, to a point, but a larger ensemble,
Yeah.
professional, semi-professional, community, doesn't make a difference.
Right.
There still has to be somebody deciding what's going to be happening.
Hmm.
Somebody has to figure out a schedule and basically try to herd cats,
Hmm.
because it's not like we're all taking this for credit. We don't
Yep.
have that luxury of band is now third period in high school. It is like,
Yeah.
I think I can make it. Well, these are our projected concert dates. Hey, sorry, I got a business. I'm going to be out of town on business. Oh, that's inconvenient. Ooh, okay.
Hmm.
Somebody has to step stuff those folders and tear them down and get it back into the library. And music librarian work is just brutal, if you ask me. I
Yep.
understand it, but I know I can do it, but I'm not wired to do it efficiently like that.
Right. Hmm.
Um, Procuring a space, procuring a performance venue. Is there going to be a recording? Oh,
Hmm.
well, there's another aspect of music that you never would think about being important of having a sound engineer. And they look at music very differently. They're not thinking about ink on a page. You know, if you've ever seen any type of engineering software, it's a whole different type of notation because it's
Hmm.
just sine waves.
Hmm.
And, it's like, that's foreign to me. Wow.
Hmm.
Okay. But you all work together. Or if you
Right.
go into recording, there's got to be a producer that has brilliant ears that can say, let's go back, and I don't think that was quite as tight as it could be. And the
Right.
conductor is nobody in a recording session other than the guy that is the point of conversation and point of focus
Right.
to the musicians that are there trying to lay down the track. So, what a wide variety of work that you never knew existed. Copyists. What is a copyist?
Right.
Well, the composer comes up with the idea. The arranger enhances that idea. Maybe he says, no, let's do it this way and figures out the fast and slow of it all.
Hmm.
But maybe he then hands it off to an orchestrator who actually writes for the given instruments to make
Hmm.
maximum impact.
Hmm.
Then he passes that off to the music copyist that creates a good looking, hopefully, score and parts that work for the musicians so they don't have to fight page turns and are accurate and don't have wrong notes because time is money in any session. We can't
Right.
take it's in a rehearsal because, Jimmy, the kazoo player says, "What is this note?" Not I
Yep.
can't read it, but does this fit? Is this right? Oh,
Hmm.
and everybody has to, I mean, that's a waste of everybody's time. So all along the way, there are these safeguards. Oh, yeah, and then the copyist gets it to the librarian who actually prints it out and assembles the books and gets them to the instrumentalists so we can ideally look at them ahead of time.
Hmm.
And that has nothing to do with the guy that's going to be playing the trumpet or the oboe
Yep.
or, the person that's is going to be executing this piece. It's
Hmm.
just all the steps that happen beforehand.
Yep.
And this all happens with publishers too.
Yeah.
They Somebody's got to do the work for the corporations that are publishing. It's all
Yep.
out. And you just, it doesn't make a difference if you don't play anymore. You know how instruments work, and
Hmm.
you know what it's like to be on that part of the stand where followed by 70, you just do a page turn and suddenly it's followed by 70 measures of rest versus if I would have just jammed it that way, I wouldn't
Hmm.
have sweating bullets over this ridiculous page turn because my fingers were already in knots over this ridiculous chromatic run.
Hmm.
Somebody's got to think about that stuff. Might as well be me. So that's that's really kind of what happened when I got into the Army and I later got out of teaching and was in the band at West Point as a music arranger.
Hmm.
I sold all my trumpets again because it was no, this is my discipline, this is my job in the Army. I want to be really as good as I can be. And I really don't have time to play on a horn when I'm surrounded by these great trumpet players an hour north of New York City, and there are no jobs for me anyway.
Hmm.
I'm good, but I'm not that good, which is
Right.
okay.
Hmm.
You know, or would I have been able to join some community bands or something? Yeah, but I wasn't able to practice the way I'd want to practice,
Hmm.
and that was not my job anymore. So I sold all my horns,
Right.
and that was 20 some years ago, and there it is. No
Yeah.
more. I miss trumpet. I still have trumpet performance anxiety nightmares. I'm going into like a dummy. I wrote this real super screamy money note on a trumpet part, and the lead trumpet player isn't there, and like, here, we need you to play your own piece. Like, oh, why did I write that? That's dumb. Never been able. So, or you show up at the job and you take your trumpet out and it's great, and then you realize you have a trombone mouthpiece. Like, what? So sticks with you. All this trumpet playing stuff sticks with you.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean it's just interesting though. I mean, even though like essentially, and I know we had this kind of conversation a little bit about it, but I thought I thought maybe we'd dig into a little bit about how you were talking about like this kind of, or how you help with the customer, and you made a comment, and it just stuck to me when you were talking that you were a West Point band, for example, of the music happened, but here's some things for more for your tool belt. And I was just what was fascinating to me when you said that comment is it just makes me feel that you're more of it's back and forth between the makers of music, the arrangers of music, and the performers of music that you've kind of huddled and listened to. And I
Mhm.
was just interested if you could expand on that a little bit. And the reason why is because it's actually, and we can be all philosophical and act, adult education and the PhD of adult education that I have, and I'm being ha ha ha. But it's this thing of where you're listening and you're hearing what the needs are of everybody and kind of fulfilling them. And that's really interesting to me, especially in a music world, because most of the time, and I shouldn't say most of the time, but some of the times, this is the way it's going to be, and this is how we're going to do it. And regardless, this is it. We're going to do it this way. And no listening is happening. And I'm not talking about a band director who doesn't listen to their students or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's more of, it seems like, like I always think like this concert has to happen this way or this has to happen that way. And it seems with you, you have a way to kind of orchestrate that with other people, pun intended when I said orchestrate, to kind of have this
It just
knowledge filtering between each other, I guess is the best way to say it.
it depends. Okay,
Okay.
so with as far as being a writer in the army bands,
Mhm.
it really just depends on who the conductor is and how they decide to take care of business.
Okay. Okay.
So my first experience was when I found out that, I don't want to say just the arranger of, I wrote this thing and the second movement was supposed to be, in my mind, I
Hmm.
would have liked it to be slower.
Sure.
And the gentleman who was a conductor said, that's nice. This is the tempo I'm taking it. And I learned a hard lesson that as soon as it is out of my hands and given to a conductor,
Right.
they use the material to fit their vision.
Their vision. Yeah. Okay.
And you can say, this is my intent, but you also need to be prepared
Yeah.
for the answer of like, yes, I know, but this is how it needs to work. Okay.
Right.
And so, you have to, in a lot of ways, be willing to get over yourself. As an arranger, I've always approached it of, I'm making suggestions that if all of this happens the way I think it should work out pretty well.
Okay.
Whether my concept of Allegro is on a different wavelength than yours is, Josh.
Hmm.
If I can't talk to you, then I've learned along the way of like, you have to trust your musicians.
Hmm.
Eh, I know it's a roundabout answer, but this is how, the learning process went, that you
Yeah.
have to musicians, but at the same time, if you're not going to be there when they rehearse it, then maybe you should really be clear what your intent is.
Right.
Not, and to use the term idiot proofing is very not nice, but it's idiot proofing in the extent of
Hmm.
like, yeah, but what I meant was, no, no, no. Then I'm being a fool because I didn't put it down. Make
Right.
sure your is very clear.
Right. Yeah.
And as you progress in the army, and in my case, you get some more rank, and you are expected to be at meetings and planning meetings. You could weigh in saying, okay, two commanders ago, we tried that, and this is what happened. That's not to say it
Right.
won't work, but we have gone down this road, and maybe there's a different
Yeah.
path we can take.
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer is yeah, and the other times is like, yeah, well, it's like you're doing an Army-Navy football game halftime show. You
Hmm.
really don't have a choice. I got to fill X amount of time, and we definitely need
Yep.
to hit certain marks.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, whatever you want. Christmas. The only way to screw up a Christmas concert, a holiday concert, whatever term, whatever it's billed as, the only
Hmm.
way to screw that up is by not playing holiday music.
Right.
So, as an arranger, your job is to deliver what the client wants.
Hmm.
And, you can help persuade that, is, do we have something for this part of the audience? Are we hitting this benchmark? Is it kid friendly? It doesn't all have to be kid friendly, but
Sure.
I had a commander once that said, if your Christmas show or any of your concerts are being successful when you start hearing kids moving around.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
But that's his life experience.
Yeah.
And well, because the kids are getting fidgety.
Hmm.
Mm, all right. And unfortunately, you have to balance. It's a real balance of terror of who are you trying to make happy. And to me, it was always the audience on any project. If the
Right.
audience responds, nobody's going to be angry that the audience clapped for you if they were
Right.
really earnest about it, whether you like the piece or not.
Hmm.
As an arranger, it's irrelevant whether I like the piece to write or not.
Hmm.
That's not the job. Your job is to deliver the goods, and this is how it's working. Oh, okay. And this is the instrumentation you have.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. And once you get past that hurdle of, well, I don't like this piece, well, so what? Somebody does.
Right. Right.
And that's very important because you talk about mentoring peers. I had a very good friend that had gotten a job as an arranger in one of the other army bands.
Hmm.
And his first job was to write a medley from basically an ABBA medley. This was when Mamma Mia had just come out.
Hmm.
He'd asked about certain things, should I make this fancy because I don't want the musicians to be bored? And it's like you can't worry about the players,
Hmm.
what they like or not, because I'm going to write this awesome tuba line for Josh, and by golly, he just retired, and now the next person that has to play it's going to be hating my guts because I wrote this line.
Yep. I get it.
Yeah. Or maybe the 75th time Josh has to play this, he's going to be angry at me because I wrote this. Why did you write that? Well, I
Right.
want to keep you busy, Josh. No, that doesn't qualify. So you write
Hmm.
what needs to be written, knowing full well that, like in the special service bands, you have these amazing players.
Hmm.
And, I'm sorry you have your doctorate in performance, and I'm asking you to play this half note line in this holiday song. But the other option is we'll leave it out. You can sit there.
Hmm.
You know, it's it's not good music. It's not bad music. It's music. It's the arrangement. But this is a line that happens, and I've given it to you, and I know you're angry about it, but it'll be over soon.
Hmm.
Keep smiling. It's holiday. So, and what happens because we're all musicians and we'll all yik yak in the hallway about, oh, I can't believe it. Like, oh, I know. But at the end
Hmm.
of the day, the beauty of working with a group like that or any group is that, they'll play it and they'll just knock it out of the park. And the audience will feel like they've just been at Disney World. And that's when you win. You
Hmm.
know, it's, the old, if the tree falls in the woods, doesn't make a noise if nobody's there to hear it. And the answer is no, it just releases energy.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, well, the reason why I'm asking all these questions is just because, I feel like, and you've made this comment already in this podcast, but it's like you've learned so much from learning from them. And
yes.
that's what I'm interested in because I feel like even though, we can, and I'm not here to argue the degrees and all that and all that, but the experiences are just priceless. I mean, you said that word, you said it priceless because I find it very interesting how you listen and just make sure that it's about for, and I'll say it this way, music's sake, to have the music perform, to make sure that you're giving what the client wants, but then at the same time, making sure that it's success, and you're listening to all of that and how you can, I don't want to the best way to say it, and I'm going to use visuals, but how you're pulling this and pushing that button and turning this and doing that, where you're not making it too ridiculous, but you're kind of keeping everybody on the same playing field. And that's a lot. I mean, being a band director that, you had to keep everybody, all those players together all the time, and that's a lot, but
A
it's the
lot
same
of
thing
it,
on your end too, you
a
know?
lot of it would come down if you were asked to write a big piece, and this applies to anybody, is trying to find out how all of this fits in the overall concert. Because oh, well, I've got all these hunter killer players. I'm going to write something hunter killer hard. Well,
Hmm.
why? There's plenty of music out there that somebody took the dump truck and dumped all the notes out, and it's just hard for the sake of being hard, and that's a great workout. But then there's something to be said about something that has a lot of musical worth without having to be a technical exercise either.
Hmm.
Or am I pacing this the right way? Is this an opener? Is this a closer? Do we need to breathe after this? And, so being in a situation where they would have programmed concerts, new concerts every week. I mean, it's a quick
Right.
turnaround.
Yeah.
And so maybe, I wrote this piece for Josh, and the question is, well, we used it in the first half of the concert last week, but it'd probably be more appropriate here.
Hmm.
Oh, well, if Josh is going to be performing this, then maybe we should be mindful of what's happening beforehand.
Right.
Nothing like having this killer tuba solo after we just played the greatest hits of tuba, mania, and
Yeah.
you need hamburger helper at
Yeah.
halftime. It's like, nah, so
Yeah.
I mean that's a lot of the listening too, of like,
Hmm.
yeah, can you write something that has impact and sounds full where not everybody's playing all the time,
Hmm.
just to get the horn off the face, take care of the players. They
Yep.
will take care of you. It's okay if they don't like the piece, but if they know that you're bringing your A game, they will bring the A game for the audience as well because they're professionals and even non-professional, whatever that term actually means.
Yeah.
If
You.
you can give an ensemble something they sound good at, they will enjoy playing it.
Yeah. But you remind me of all the euphonium kind of obligatos and all the super hard parts in the euphonium parts. And I always say this, like, I've seen some arrangements. I'm like, yes, he was a euphonium player. Great. He's punishing all of us,
That's right.
because it's superly hard for no reason. You
Yeah, I know. Right. Well, I wish I could play this. I wonder what this sounds like. Yeah.
know?
It's weird because you say that, and a lot of times I would write stuff, and it always dawns on me of like, yeah, would I want to have to tangle with that as a line, as a brass player? Hmm.
Right.
And
Yep.
that does impact, my writing. That doesn't mean I can't write hard and high if I know who the client is. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, as a trumpet player, you want me to start this thing on a high G because it works? Knock yourself out. I couldn't do it, but okay. But I know you can. But I would
Yep.
still with players of like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about writing. Is this going to be realistic?
Hmm. Yep.
Okay, all right. You
Yep.
know, knowing your client helps.
Yeah. No,
That's
and that's so much. And I just feel like the only reason why I keep saying this is it's the things that I don't think people really, really get for music making, and especially like, I'll throw this out there to you, and I know a lot of people thought I was crazy in the beginning when we started our band program down in Wildwood, called the Annual Community Band by the Sea. It's actually going to be our fifth year in 2005. We're excited about that. When I started that, everybody I talked to was like, play easy pieces. Play easy pieces. You want them to be successful because essentially what we do is we do a rehearsal on Friday, and then on Saturday we get together just as a kind of a touch up and then we play. Now I give them music, prior and that kind of things.
yeah.
However,
Rehearsal
I
is
didn't
not.
want, yeah, right, which is not practice, right? It's not practice. It's just a we're getting together rehearsal. Well, there are easier pieces there. They're ones that are successful, but I also do still challenge because I feel that's important. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
just, and I know you're looking at that side of things because it's like I want people to keep coming back because I want people to, enjoy the experience, not just, oh, I'm just going to play my horn down at the beach. You
right.
know what I mean? Anybody can do that. It's just I want it to be something thrilling. And I feel like that's where you're going as far as what you're heading to when you're working with different clients and when you're arranging and talking to folks, you're trying to make that success challenge, obviously. And there's just so many levels. And that's what I keep going at that you have to kind of watch and poke at, you know what I mean? Just to,
Well,
to
this is
have a good
also
production.
it is a big production, and the
Yep.
other thing, is it just depends on what the client is. Is it a
Yep.
one-off that they have one rehearsal that you know that the players will be prepped, but it's we've got a whole rehearsal to put, we have a whole concert to put together
Hmm.
and 2 hours to get 90 minutes of music together. So at
Right.
most, if we actually play through all this stuff versus just hitting transitions, that's that's gold right there.
Yeah.
Or am I writing for a younger ensemble, a high school ensemble that will be playing this all marching band season,
Hmm.
or for concert season, or what is the level of your
Yep.
player? Oh, this we're going to bring this into a recording session where they're just going to read it.
Yep.
And the answer is the composer wrote some really ridiculously not easy stuff because I guess the only bad key is the one you didn't practice.
Hmm.
But, if okay, we're going in and, away a lot of these, like the video game or movie soundtrack recording session is they roll the tape, they play it. And if they have to punch in this measure or a note, anybody need anything else? No. Okay, go. So there's no time for questions.
Yep.
There's no, so
Yep.
all this whole line of make sure the copy work is clean enough that you can read it from a distance and there are no
Yeah.
questions by the player, even if it almost seems, I don't want to say insulting, but
Hmm.
I'll guarantee you there's never been a percussionist that after a whole bunch of rest and they turn the page and there's this note on the page has never appreciated the fact that in parentheses you put in suspended symbol. Because they're going to do it anyway, you know.
Yep.
5006 triangle. Ping. So thinking ahead, it's not just
Yep.
we need to get this out, but what can I do to maximize your rehearsal time, your performance time?
Right.
If Josh, you can't play it because you don't have the chops, that's not my problem. If you
Hmm.
can't play it because you can't read it, that's a huge problem.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
You know, and
Yep.
so looking at music as a commodity is very different. I look at it as a performer every time I do it, although I don't perform.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know, I'm always trying to, and I don't want to say underestimate the performer
Hmm.
because knowing it's not the only thing, but I would rather give a performer a piece of music that's 6 pages long that they can read and not have to stress about page turns than trying to, jam it onto one of those traditional British brass band folio things where you have 9,000 bars on a piece of marching music. You're like, what? You know, I mean, I don't have high school eyes anymore. I can't read stuff that far away. So you make it big so they can't miss. You don't even give somebody
Yeah.
an opportunity to miss. No questions. So, I don't know if that's really answering your question about the
It,
supply, but
it does, yeah. And you just reminded me, and it's so funny just because I'm in historical stuff, and this is just such a side note. But you made the comment about music that way. I have a march that was originally written for the area I grew up in. It's called Slate Belt Band on Parade, is what it's called. And it's an old march, and it's all handwritten. All the way through, and I have copy, and it's like you look at those parts, and that's actually one of my goals someday to re do a better version of that. And maybe I'll be talking to you because I'm not the technology dude. But and it's like, but anyway, it's like it always reminds me of that how stressful that is to play. And when I first introduced it to a community group in our area, it was very difficult to play just because it was, what
you
is
know,
that? Is that a natural? Is that a flat? You
I
know,
figured out. It'll work. Yeah.
just leave
Well,
it out.
the other thing is that folks are not used to reading manuscript anymore.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, when back in the days when you would rent these Broadway productions, for high school or college or community theater and stuff
Hmm.
like that, you'd get the big books that were all hand copied,
Yeah,
and it's blue, and like you learned very quickly that good penmanship means a lot.
it does.
Uh, but back in the 40s and the 50s when they're hand copying and you get
Yep.
paid by the page. And, I mean, they were just flying. That's,
Yep.
because the orchestrator got it to us, and then the show opens in 2 days. I guess we should be able to read this.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the reality of the job.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, so I think that perceiving music very differently as you continue morphing through your career.
Hmm.
Um, it's not just about the sound you hear, but how is that sound made? And there are a lot of different aspects to that.
Hmm.
And it might not be the fact that you're learning a new bit of notation today, but maybe you're learning more about what goes into it. So the next time you see a performing ensemble, maybe you think differently of like, wow, I mean, there have been plenty of performances I've gone to of all different types, like some major symphony performances that I'll
Hmm.
sit there and whereas I might not like the piece they're playing,
Hmm.
I sure do appreciate what it must have taken to get that together,
Yeah.
not as the people on the stands, but the
Yep.
people providing the material for the stands
Yep.
and so like I look at drum corps nowadays, and I know this is heretical.
Hmm.
I think the level of execution is just brilliant.
Hmm.
Mind,
Sure.
don't care for it at all because it's not my cup of tea. But as a brass player, I mean, the writing, the arrangers, the
Right.
fact young skilled people can execute at such a high level is just astounding, and I really appreciate it. Whether
Hmm.
it's, I'm kind of old school.
Yeah.
I figured, well, I'm kind of old, so so I'm not a real fan of electronics and stuff on the field, but I will not deny the
Yeah.
electronic impact. And I mean, that's the
Yeah.
direction that the performance has gone into, and it's irrelevant whether I like it or not. That's the way it is, and it is still
Right.
brilliant. I
It's
mean,
brilliant. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
wow,
I know.
so
I still remember it. It's kind of fun. I'm old school too, so I will say that. I'm one that I like to everything be marched on to the field, but that's me. But I went to a couple of those shows, and I just sat there the one time, and I remember with my wife and friends, I go, what did we just see? Like, because it's just so like it's so integral with like
it's an
how
experience.
many things they do, on the field in that such short amount of time. So.
But as a creator of performance stuff, I would love to sit and watch how that is put together. My
Yeah.
my fascination is how do you
Yep.
rehearse something like, and that goes with orchestra too, symphony orchestra. How do you put that together? And a lot of people, one of the big rages now in symphonies is, to make it more accessible, is that they will do these movies with the soundtrack stripped out of
Yep.
them and it plays live.
Yep.
And you can argue that it's just movie music. I'm sorry, John Williams' music is symphonic music that happens to deliver a message,
Hmm.
but it's brilliant writing, and his
Yeah.
orchestra were, are spot on. But to put that together,
Yeah.
what a treat to see even 15 minutes of Star Wars being put together
Yeah.
at a rehearsal.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Star Wars not, but it's, at least pre-Disney, and but still the magic of seeing Darth Vader the first time with a live horn section playing, you're like, oh, I'm 10 again.
I will say when I was up in Connecticut and I went up to Boston Pops all the time. It's one of my favorites. I just there's a lot of emotional connection there we can talk about another time. But I went there to see Home Alone and then they were in Tanglewood and I know we were at Penn State. So I mean it was probably about 5 hours away and we
Mhm.
went to see Jaws. I
Yeah.
mean literally and it was just that. They were playing it live with the movie at the same time. I mean, my
Well,
goodness. It's brilliant.
I know that folks can consider it. I know, to me, real music is whatever you're playing, whether it's your taste in music or not. That's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
But real music is what you are playing at any given time because it's on the stand and what you're making of it.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't know, what a treat to be able to see that. And okay, so maybe you went to music school because you want to play, symphonic music. I would argue that movie music is very symphonic.
Hmm.
Maybe
It
it's
is.
not traditional. Maybe it's not
Yeah.
Shostakovich. Maybe it's not Beethoven.
Hmm.
So, but I'll tell you, it's all been influenced by it.
Yes,
And
it has.
I'm sorry, good writing is good writing. And I suppose that, takes us back to the whole drum corps thing of like, might not be my cup of tea, but man, they just killed it.
Yep.
Oh,
Hmm.
proves to me that that horn line's better than that one. Can't, sorry,
Uh-huh.
can't do it. It's just different. And man, and you sit there and you have a physical response to these young performers doing this stuff. I mean, whether you like the tune or not, you get goosebumps because of the physical impact of the
Hmm.
sound. It's like, oh, yeah, that's a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It is. It is very much so. Wait, I wanted to shift a little gears a little bit because I wanted to just for a few seconds, I want to talk. I know you went back into guitar playing. I just wanted to bring this up a little bit. I know you're not a performer, and I
uh,
know that, but I was just interested if you would just
doing,
share a little bit, like
doing,
what your interest is of kind of jumping there because I see in the background they're there, and I know they you were joking when I first started talking to you. You're like, well, I bought another one.
yeah, I never understood that until I started getting into guitar. So we had the great COVID shutdown, as we've all remembered.
Yep.
And I was thinking, I might like to start playing an instrument again. And I mean, I'd spent so much time on trumpet, but not having played in 20 years, that's not just something, if I want to get an instrument, I want to get a decent instrument to play on.
Right.
And it's hard to field test an instrument when you don't have any chops, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, I get it.
And then the idea of, I'm old, so I get up early in the morning, and the idea of practicing, on my front porch at 6, the neighbors would probably not be real happy about that. So, but I've always found guitar and string instruments like that to be very fascinating. What an amazing instrument.
Hmm.
And I always thought about I'd like to take guitar lessons, so I thought, well, why not?
Hmm.
And so I decided to try to learn how to play guitar.
Okay.
So and mostly for the mental exercise of it.
Hmm.
As an educator, it's easy to tell somebody, oh, well, all you have to do is, it's like any instrument. All you have to do is push this key down at the right time and, blow the right way, and the note comes out. Simple, right? Yeah, it's like piano, not a problem. You just need to hit that point. So I thought, well, why not? Acoustic guitar is nobody's going to be angry if you're playing that in your enclosed front porch at the morning.
Yeah.
The dogs aren't going to bark. We'll be in good shape. I don't have dogs, I have cats, but you're still not going to make dogs in the neighborhood bark. And so I started to try to learn how to play guitar, and it's fascinating to me with absolutely no desire to perform on it, just to
Hmm.
learn how the instrument works.
Hmm.
Um, that even though I was a French horn player a billion years ago, it would turn out that I don't have the dexterity in my left hand that one would like to have as a guitar player.
Sure. Yeah.
Muscle memory, what? Uh, and it's also very confusing to me because so often we learn that piano, the lower part of the horn is down here. In a guitar, the lower part of the horn is up here. So when you're playing higher, you're working your way down, or are you working up the strings? Being an overthinker of everything. Yeah, so um, it's been, I guess, about 3 years now, going on 3.5 years, and I practice every morning.
Hmm.
And it's not trying to learn any great tunes or anything. I mean, I spend a little time with classical guitar, and now have these guitar picks on my right hand that I hate, because but I enjoy it immensely. And it's to me, it's not about performing. It's about trying to fire off more neurons, and it's wonderfully frustrating. And I was talking to my wife about this, saying that, after 3 years, I really was hoping that I'd be better at this.
Hmm.
And she very kindly reminded me that while, most people start learning their instruments in grade 5, fifth grade, she said, let's see, 3 years. I would probably say you're probably one of the better seventh graders at this point. I was like, probably true. It's very interesting. I'm sorry, it's been an ex interesting exercise to me
Hmm.
to have musical knowledge of, I understand theory, I understand
Right.
harmony. You don't have to, we're not going to spend time worrying about what notation looks like.
Right.
I live in notation. That's what I do for a living.
Hmm.
But it still doesn't change the fact that, wow, I'm having a hard time playing that pentatonic in this position because. So it's very interesting to relate to that. And while I'm not really an aficionado of a lot of rock and roll guitar, and I don't mean that in a negative way, it's just
Hmm.
you're listening to it differently, and it's like, okay, I'm hearing what he's doing. I could never do that for a while, at least until I'm in grade 8, maybe 9.
Hmm.
Um, but once again, appreciating the fact that, you've got these rock stars that never worried about what the names of notes are,
Right.
that never worried about notation. And you could say it's an A chord, but they just kind of know that I'm going to do that. But they don't really know what an A chord is. They just
Yep.
know it's going to be this hand position. And I wonder sometimes if notation actually gets in the way of making music,
Hmm.
because it sure gets in the way of my making music. But but it's been a great brain exercise, and I really enjoy it. And when it sounds good, it sounds really good. And most of the other time, it sounds like I'm in grade seven, but it's still a delight to work on it
Yeah.
because progress and there's no gun to my head. And it's also nice being at an age where you have your weekly guitar lesson, but it's not like I'm not going to be ready for it. It's, hi, this is what I was having a hard time with this week. Maybe we can address that.
Yeah, right.
And even though my teacher very nicely keeps saying, well, next time you're sitting around, at a campfire playing, no, no, that ain't going to happen. That's not happening. But let's just keep pushing. That's fine. So yeah, I've enjoyed the experience. I'm absolutely horrible on piano. I use it as it is a tool for me to figure out voicings and
Yep.
harmonies, but not a performance thing. You would never
Yep.
want to hear me try to perform on it. You could have no admission and you'd still ask for your money back. That's how good I am on piano. But so yeah,
Yeah,
just
no,
saying.
I get it, but at the same time, I always joke, and I'll leave you with this, and I'll be the educator that your teacher's probably trying to say to you. It's like you're being hard on yourself. You're being hard on yourself. Just keep at it. You'll do it. But it's really neat to me to find, you went to that because I think a lot of people don't see that, where there's, like it can help. And like you said, fire more neurons, get a little bit more dexterity in your hands, get yourself critically thinking about things more. It's a way to kind of do something beyond than, and I shouldn't say it this way. I do like watching television, but just watching television, it's like it becomes some sort of activity that you can get your body to do. And that's kind of cool that you're doing that, even that you've been involved with it with all your life, you're still
Very
coming back to an instrument, where you started essentially. I mean, not the same one, but
It's fascinating though, because all the same things that you used to hear still apply. And
right.
it's unfortunately a lot of times it's a matter of building muscle memory and repetition.
Yeah.
There is no quick route to success. And there are certainly people out there that are wired and geared to be just brilliant on any given instrument, harpists, pianists, wind instruments, other string instruments, and it just also helps me to appreciate. I cannot imagine being on that level.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
being
Hmm.
a piano player like John Batiste or a string player like Chris Thiele, just on a completely they think on a whole different level.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's that, like good for them, man. I can't imagine what music sounds like to them, what
Yeah.
they perceive.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'll do the best I can with what I got. And
Yeah.
like I said in the beginning, sometimes your best is better than others and not nearly anything compared to anybody else. And that's okay because I
That's
do
okay.
what I can, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Well, hey, as we're kind of wrapping up this podcast already, I just wanted to ask like one last question. It's a deep question. I kind of ask all my participants this at the end just to get their take, and it's more of advice and whatever you can say about it. So as I focus on a lot of folks who kind of continue playing or maybe even stopped. I know that's not necessarily your case, but it sort of is. You did really stop your instrument and then you
Good.
came back to an instrument. I'm not saying it's the same one, and that's okay. I know you're still involved with music, which is amazing. But I was just wondering if you had any words of advice or anything to share with anybody as far as, again, that lifelong learning and music education I keep going, of how people continue, kind of going and being involved with it. I mean, no offense, but I know you went into a different direction than what you originally wanted, but you still kept in the music world and you still are in the field of music and you're still working in music. And then it's kind of cool that even though I know you don't consider yourself a performer, but you're still playing an instrument and still involved with it. So it's like that's what I find is cool because it has that kind of connection, that we fall back on, and I just thought, I don't know if you had any advice to anybody or anything you want to say to anybody as we wrapping this up.
Wrapping this up, I think looking back and the whole takeaway would be this. You decided to play an instrument because of any number of reasons, and you stuck with the instrument. And even if you didn't go to music school, some of the best musicians I know, performers I know, never bothered, they don't have a degree in music.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean anything other than you have a degree in music. And that's not to denigrate anybody with a degree in music. It's just,
Yeah.
I've met some scientists that are just brilliant players. Like, okay, great.
Hmm.
Um, keep doing what you're doing because you enjoy it. That doesn't mean you won't get frustrated. Frustration's okay, but you're playing because you enjoy it, and if it brings you happiness, great. That's, the world has so much turmoil in it now, and if it means that I can take my instrument out of the case and play something I like for my own enjoyment or somebody else's enjoyment, then, why would you want to not do that?
Right.
Doesn't make a difference how good you are, compared to somebody else. Who cares? If you are enjoying yourself and it's bringing you a sense of sanity and pleasure, maybe some frustration, but then you're able to accomplish something that you weren't able to a couple days, couple weeks, couple months ago. Great. That shows growth, and that's the reward. That's the reward of music. You've put in some time, and maybe it's not as much as you'd like, but maybe it's what you have. Who can ask you to be any better than who you are? I
Hmm.
mean, that's what started this whole thing. All I ask is that you give me your best, and some days that'll be better, and some days it'll be less. But if you're bringing it anytime you approach it, you win. That would be my takeaway, Josh.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, that's it's very inspirational because I feel like, I think we shortchange it sometimes, as I said, and it's like just because it does become hard sometimes, just like you say, and how you're frustrated playing guitar, for example, right now, but you're still at it and it still brings you joy. And I
And
don't know, we didn't really talk about this, but it has that, we did before the podcast, I'm thinking about, but before that, how we said fun, just having fun with things, because I think in our world, we think we can't have fun anymore when we're adults, right?
I think fun is important, and it does bring me great joy, even though I'm not Eddie Van Halen or Andre Segovia or so what? I'm me, and I couldn't do this a year ago, so
Yeah,
yay! This
that's
is
great.
it's nothing wrong with having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
Well,
old
thank you.
good old fashioned legal fun.
That's right.
Family
Well, hey,
podcast.
Douglas, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate it. I also want to say this, and I know I hope you're getting, feedback, but we do appreciate you in the music world. I know when I was using your services when I was a college band director, you were very, very willing to help us, and I appreciate that. And you're an inspiration for that, just because you take that time to really help folks, and that's what it's all about, to be successful and to again have fun in music making. And I think that's important. So thank you, and I appreciate so much for, like I said, being on this podcast and be willing to talk to me today. And like I
My
wish
pleasure.
you luck for the guitar, too. I'm excited to hear in the next, in
Couple
the
coming
next
with me.
year or whatever. We'll see where you are.
All right, Josh. Thanks.
Thank you.